Hi everyone, this video comes to you as a response to a question that I received from the one, the only, Photon Potato. That is a great name. I love that name. All right, the question is, do you have any ideas on how I could mix noise patterns into a fog volume or code a simple volumetric smoke based on a noise pattern? Well, my answer to you is, yeah, I can get you really close. Really close. In fact, the outcome will be what you see on screen, which is the visual look and feel of fog based on an organic noise pattern. However, there's a caveat. It's not a true noise pattern per se. It's using the Unity particle system and a PNG of a white wispy cloud graphic. So that's the technique, that's the strategy we're going to employ today to get what you're looking at right here, right now. So let's dive in. The first thing you will need is a particle cloud graphic. You can make your own in Photoshop, you can search the internet and all that, but that's a little bit of a headache. I'm going to link to one, I'm going to link to the specific one that I'm using in the show notes. Let's go ahead and start from scratch. I'm going to do so by deleting a few things from my project. So I'm going to delete these out of the hierarchy. I'm also going to grab these two assets and I'm going to delete them from my project window. Gone. Perfecto. All right. So I'm going to join you from start to scratch. I'm going to begin by importing the particle cloud white PNG into my project. And the very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new material. Here we are. I'm going to name this material fog. And this fog, I'm going to change the shader from the universal render pipeline lit shader. And this should work both in HDRP as well as in the built-in render pipeline. I tend to work a lot in the universal render pipeline, so that's just where I happen to be today. All right, so I'm going to change this by searching for alpha blended. And you'll see that we've got two options. I'm choosing the first one, and it looks to be, yeah, this looks great. So let me show you what the other one looks like so you can differentiate. So that's the first one. This is the second one. Okay, the second one looks like it has soft particles factor and a tint color. You know what? Here's the thing. I'm going to utilize the soft particles factor. So I'm going to use this alpha blended particle right here. This is not the normal one I use, but I'm going to use it because I want to play with that soft particles, and you'll see why in a moment. So first things first, let's grab our white cloud and let's drag it into the texture slot of our material, and we're done with that. So now in our hierarchy, let's create an empty project or an empty game object. And I'm going to call this fog container. And inside this fog container, and I'm right-clicking on fog container and coming down to effects and choosing particle system. And you can see that the particles, they're moving left to right. Fog usually moves in a horizontal direction, right? It wafts along the ground. The reason why I place the particle system within the fog container empty game object is because it allows the fog to, through no extra effort of our own, it moves it left to right. Let me show you what happens if you don't use the fog container. So if I just go ahead and hide this for a moment, and let's say I just create a particle system. Well, you can see it's shooting vertically. It's starting low and moving upward. So I could rotate my particles, of course, or I could come into these settings and try to find the right settings to get it to move horizontally versus vertically. But you can see that we're already getting into extra steps, and I like to avoid unnecessary work. Maybe it's a character flaw. Maybe I'm just expedient. For the sake of my ego, I'm going with the latter. All right, so here we are. We have the fog. We see the particles, and we can tell that the particles are not very attractive. They're just these soft white spheres that do not look like anything we would want. So let's replace these spheres with our clouds. So I'm going to close the particle system, and I'm going to scroll down in the inspector to the bottom until I see renderer. I'll open up the renderer, and I can see that here I have a material and it's particles unlit. The particles unlit are the spheres. We're going to choose our fog material, and we're going to slot that in to our renderer. Perfect. So now we can already see that we have little clouds wafting through the air. So I'm closing the renderer. I'm coming up to the top particle system. I'm going to, first things first, we need to work with the speed. So the start speed is 5. If I change it to 1, they'll move a little slower and they move a shorter distance. But we don't want all of the particles moving exactly the same speed and to the exact same finish line. We want to see some variance. So the way we do that is we come over to the start speed, we go all the way to the right to where we see the downward arrow, and we choose random between 2 constants. These 2 constants are going to be 0, meaning some fog will just visibly appear in place and then fade away in place, while others will move with greater speed, say 5. All right, so we can tell that all of our fog particles are identical in size. So if we go to start size, we can see that we have 1. We can change this to something like 10. So already you can see, all right, we're getting close. We're moving in the direction we want to go. But before we go much further, if I move these back to say 2, or I think they were 1, look at the rotation. Like we can tell that they're the exact same graphic, just appearing everywhere. So we've only got 1 PNG to work with, so we can modify the rotation to fool our eyes into believing that there's a lot of different shapes going on. So I want you to choose start rotation, go over to the right, and I want you to choose curve. Now, you'll see at the very bottom of your inspector, particle systems curve. If you don't see this red line, it might look like this. All you need to do to open it up is simply click next to the name, and I want you to grab the starting point on the red line, drag it down to the bottom, and I want you to grab the right dot, the control point, and I want you to drag it to the top. So now you can see, as you drag those around, you can see that there's rotation happening. There's less uniformity. So we're done with that part. Let's close the particle system curve. All right, so we can now close the particle system and move on to emission. Now emission, oh, I'm sorry. I also, because I was making a point, I need to put my size back up to 10. Now for emission, we've got the rate over time, which is the number of particles emitted every second. We want to change this from, say, a 10 to, let's try something like 40. And we're done with emission. See how easy that was? Now let's move on to the shape. Now the shape, you can see as soon as we activate or open the shape pane, we're shown the visualization of the emitter, which is a cone. We want to change the shape, the cone shape, from cone over to box. Already, that changes how our fog is emitted. All right? So, with that said, now what we need to do is we want our fog to be placed exactly over our plane. So the way I'm going to do that is through 2 parameters, scale, and also I'm going to use the shape gizmo editing mode. So first things first, I'm going to increase along the x-axis. Let's try something like 5. And I'm going to try 5 on the z-axis as well. And then the y-axis is going to be the height of your fog. So if it's kind of low to the ground, if it's not very tall, you can leave it at 1. But if you wanted it to take up a lot more of your atmosphere vertically, you could of course include this to be something like 10 or even something like 50. So I'm going to leave mine at 1 because we're only working with 2 little spheres. We don't need a lot of height. So the last thing I'm going to do right here in the shape panel, and you know what? I'm going to, before I work with the shape panel, I'm going to grab my container and I'm just going to center it onto my plane. Now I'm going to select my particle system one last time. I'm going to grab the shape editing gizmo, and that places control points on the perimeter of the box. So I'm going to just expand this a bit, and I'm going to have this occupy the proper area. That looks about right. So now we have a box emitter. Perfect. Now you might be saying, hey, I can't really see anything, and you would be correct. So what we need to do to fix that is we need to activate the color over lifetime. So choose color over lifetime and click on the white color field to open the gradient editor. First thing I want you to do is place a control point in the center by clicking on the top, and then move your mouse to the to either end, and we're going to select the alpha, and we're going to drop that down to 0. We're going to do that for both sides. What this effectively does for us is it tells the particle when it's first created to be invisible, and then as through its life, it gradually ramps up until it's fully opaque, and then it at the center of its life, and then as it ramps down toward the end of its life, it fades back to transparent. Now in the center, you can tell we still don't see a lot going on, so I'm going to grab the center control point and I'm going to lower the opacity just a bit. And this is to taste. It's like building a recipe. You're building a fog that needs to suit your taste. So I'm going to grab something like this. It's still visible, but it's not overly so. So we're done with the graphic. We're done with the gradient editor. So now we can come in here, and now we've basically created it. Now we're going to customize it to be more nuanced, to fit our needs. So the first thing I'm going to do, this fog is moving a little too quickly for me. This is like a fog you might see emit. It's almost like smoke coming off of like a large campfire or a bonfire or a brush fire. If we leave our start speed, the first remember we're working between 2 constants. The first one is 0 in place, and we can take the 5 and let's say we just make it like a 0.3. That's better, that's slower, that's not moving so quick, that feels more natural. So we're down for that. So the start color is white. And now let's check, I'm just going to play around and look at things. So if we wanted to change the color of the fog uniformly from start to end, we could choose start color, and we could just make it say red, and there's a red fog. However, there may be cases in which you want the fog to start as one color and end as another, or to appear to be a mix of colors, all kind of fading in and out of one another. That happens in the color over lifetime. So we can choose the top control point controls the transparency, and the bottom control point controls color. So if I choose the starting color here, let's say we just make it green, and you can see all of our fog is green now. But if I choose the ending control point and I change this to something like red, you can see that now there's a mixture happening. It's green, it's red, and it gives a very unhealthy look. So you might have that kind of need. Say it's a chemical plant. Say it's you're You have a smokestack from the factory, and the smoke starts as one color as it's really hot. Then as it cools in the atmosphere, it's another color, and it looks more like a pollutant. You can do things like that using color over lifetime. That's not what we're looking for today, so I'm going to move mine back to white for both control points and call that that. So now we can move in and get in close and look. So this is a little close. Now I did, remember in the beginning when I was debating between the two alpha blended shaders? This is a shader that I have not worked with before, but before I switch it out, because this looks a little different than what we saw in the very beginning, which felt more pronounced. So what I want to do, I want to select my fog material, and it's got a soft particle factor of 1 and a tint color of kind of gray. Let's start with the color first. I'm going to move this to white. Already, we can see this looks more like what we saw in the beginning. Perfect. This feels, I like this shader because it gives us the added control of the color tint. Now there's a soft particle factor here. What does this soft particle factor do? I want to point out why we might need this. As I zoom out, do you see where the particle systems intersect with the ground plane? You can see the lines almost. And the same is true on the cubes. Wherever the fog particles intersect with the cube itself, you'll see these weird, like these very pronounced, there you go, very pronounced lines. So I think, I've done a lot of reading online, but I've never found a very straightforward, well-articulated answer to the problem of enabling soft particles. And what enabling soft particles does is it's supposed to eliminate that hard intersection of a particle with geometry so that we don't get these lines. So let's go into our soft particle factor, and let's just move this down and up. I'm going to move it down to nothing and turn on our pattern, or our particle. Okay, so we see them. So now I'm going to turn that way up. Soft particles factor, let's turn it up to like 3. It's as high as that goes. No, I still see them. So there's a trick to soft particles that I do not at this moment have a really good answer for. No one's been able to articulate it to me either. But here we go. You can see that you've now got an area of fog. And if you want to change this area of fog, we can go into the shape emitter, grab our control points, and we can just move them around. And now over time, you'll see that it congregates over, it changes shape. So now we've got more of like a cylindrical length of area that we are covering. This is a great way for covering an area in fog and having it be look organic, which is really nice. This is how I go about it. This is the new technique that I have learned. What are your thoughts? And do you know anything about enabling soft particles for any of the scriptable render pipelines, whether it's URP or HDRP within Unity? This is creating fog that replicates an organic noise pattern without being a true organic noise pattern. I hope that this was helpful for you. I certainly enjoyed making this. And I enjoy learning. So when you ask questions, if it's right up my alley and I'm like, ooh, that is a skill set I want to pick up, I really enjoy learning, doing the research, picking up the skill set, and then coming back and learning a second time by teaching you. I've often heard it said that you learn once by learning it yourself, and you learn a second time when you teach it to others. So that's really what this channel is all about. My name is Rick Pearson. Please like and subscribe if you'd like more of this. If you want to stay connected, if you want to keep your learning journey going with Unity, let me know. Join me right here for such things. ask questions in the comments, and I will do my best to answer every question that you propose. If not with a proper video, then certainly I'll leave a comment with instructions if I have the knowledge to share. All right. So my name is Rick Pearson. This is Unity for filmmaking and virtual production, and a little bit of game making, because they're just kind of mixing in together these days. And I love that. That's exciting. That's wonderful. That means that if you learn to do one, you can kind of learn to do a little bit of all of them. And that's, as a creative individual, that excites me. So this is it for the video today. Thank you for watching. I enjoy this, and I will see you next time in the next video. Bye.